Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Imagine it's been 6 months since you emerged from a coma after surviving a car accident that took the lives of your wife and 2 kids. After what feels like an eternity of hospital beds and rehab workouts that would make even the Hulk break a sweat, you're finally free to go home. But the mere thought of hopping into a car sends shivers down your spine. It's like your brain is staging a horror movie marathon, complete with screeching tires and broken glass. Forget entering the car. Even hearing the sounds of cars driving along the road feels like someone is holding a grenade over your head. That is what we call PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It's like your brain's way of saying, hey, remember that thing that happened? Let's relive it over and over again, just for kicks. PTSD doesn't just happen out of the blue. The disorder only starts after you have experienced a major traumatic event and starts anytime you see, hear, or even smell anything related to that event. You would immediately break into a sweat, fear, rapid breathing, and even faint sometimes. One minute you're minding your own business, and the next you're having flashbacks and nightmares that make you feel like you're starring in your very own horror flick. Bipolar disorder. If you've ever gone to an amusement park and gotten on a fast roller coaster ride, then you might understand what it feels like to have bipolar disorder. Except this is not the fun kind of ride with happy screams and cotton candy. This type of roller coaster ride would feel like you have 2 different people living inside your brain, literally. The first person would be the manic phase, which is the crazy, extremely hyperactive phase. During the manic phase, you would feel like you just won a lottery ticket and drank a double shot of espresso. You'd be extremely happy, energized, and ready to take on Mike Tyson in a boxing match. But then, just when you think you've got it all figured out, the depressive phase hits you like a ton of bricks. Like someone just threw ice water on you. Suddenly you're like Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants, grumpy, pessimistic, and convinced that everything is pointless. These extreme mood swings can happen quickly and without warning, and for some people, aggression and violence are thrown into the mix. It's like your brain is playing a cruel game of ping-pong with your emotions. Scientists and research have shown that bipolar disorder can be linked to genetics, brain chemistry, and life experiences, and it affects around 40 million people worldwide. It's not something you can catch like the flu, and it's definitely not something you can just snap out of. Schizophrenia. As a child, you probably had that imaginary friend who always seemed to be there, and nobody else could hear, see, or even talk to him except you. However, as you got older, you realized that the imaginary friend was just a trick in your mind, and they were never actually real. Now, for someone with schizophrenia, that imaginary friend is as accurate as a living, breathing person. This means they can see, hear, or talk to that person even when nobody else can. A person with this disorder also has very vivid delusions and would sometimes make up another reality. For example, they would believe that they are a secret agent on a mission to save the world. It's like being stuck in a game of 2 truths and a lie, but you're not sure which one is the lie anymore. It's like their mind is a radio that's constantly changing stations. One minute you're tuned into reality, the next you pick up signals from a completely different universe. Unfortunately, this mental disorder is the fate of about 1 in every 300 people, and there is no cure for it. Still, early diagnosis, therapy, antipsychotic medications, and self-management techniques can help manage symptoms and improve quality of life. Depressive disorder. If you have depression, it would feel like you're constantly stuck in a world that is entirely black and white with no single color. Every day seems like a terrible case of bad Mondays. However, depression isn't just about feeling sad for a while or just having a bad day. During a depressive episode, there's a constant emptiness and sadness that you would feel like someone used a giant vacuum cleaner to suck out all of the joy in your life. You lose interest in everything you used to love, like pizza, ice cream, your dog, and even watching YouTube videos on your favorite channel. Losing interest in everything would also mean that you'll just spend your day sleeping or not sleeping at all, eating everything you can find or not eating at all for days, and your energy level would be the same as a sloth's on a lazy Sunday. This disorder affects roughly 280 million people worldwide, and most people who have depression may not even realize it. But if you're constantly feeling sad and tired, you may want to see a therapist who can help you work through your feelings and learn different coping strategies. Anxiety disorder. Anxiety is the stomach-churning, sweat-inducing cocktail of fear and worry that's as unpredictable as the weather on a spring day. With an anxiety disorder, you would literally feel like you're constantly being chased by a giant grizzly bear with an axe. You would feel like your heart is literally trying to jump out of your chest. In addition to this, you'd also experience sweaty palms like you were holding a water balloon, and it would feel like your stomach is doing somersaults like an Olympic gymnast. Now, a little anxiety in small doses is helpful because it's your body's natural response to danger, which helps keep you alert and sometimes motivates you to do your best. But when anxiety starts to interfere with your day-to-day living, it may have just crossed the line into disorder territory. This means that you'll be getting loads of anxiety that makes your brain spin faster like a hamster on a wheel. You could literally be having a very great day, but would suddenly just feel an overwhelming sense of terror for no reason at all. You'll be stuck worrying about stuff that hasn't happened yet, replaying past mistakes like a broken record, and second-guessing yourself so much you'd give a magic 8-ball a run for its money. Anxiety disorder affects about 301 million people worldwide, but the good news is anxiety doesn't have to be your roommate forever. Proper cognitive therapy, deep relaxation techniques, and medications can help you lead a full, vibrant, and happy life. Eating disorder. Now, an eating disorder is like a mean bully that convinces you that there is seriously something wrong with your body, but this time the bully is inside your head. It's like your brain just develops an unhealthy relationship with food, similar to what you've had with your ex. For instance, some people with an eating disorder might become convinced that they need to be stick-thin, no matter how skinny they already are, so their brain tells them to restrict their food intake or go on severely extreme diets like eating just one egg every day. On the flip side, others might go through cycles of binge eating, where they'll inhale massive amounts of food in one sitting and then feel so guilty that they try to get rid of the food by forcing themselves to throw up or abuse. Their brain is that crazy party buddy who keeps encouraging you to go too hard, and then you regret it the next day. This toxic relationship with food is often rooted in deep emotional issues like anxiety, trauma, depression, or low self-esteem. It could either lead to anorexia, which is going on a hunger strike against yourself, or bulimia, which is the eat-purge cycle. In the United States alone, over 14 million people suffer from eating disorders. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. Imagine you're at a circus where something new and exciting is happening everywhere you look. Acrobats are flipping through the air, clowns are juggling colorful balls, and tigers are jumping through flaming hoops. Your eyes are darting from one thing to the next, trying to take it all in, but focusing on just one thing is almost impossible. That's kind of what it's like to have ADHD, a wild three-ring circus happening in your brain 24/7. Your brain is like a hyperactive ringmaster, constantly whipping you from one whirlwind thought to the next without allowing you to catch your breath. If you have ADHD, you will often struggle with things like paying attention, staying organized, and controlling your impulses. It's like your mental switch is always on, and switching it off is impossible no matter how hard you try. Your brain would be constantly bombarded with exciting possibilities you want to explore all at once. It's like a kid in a candy store with an unlimited allowance. This disorder affects between 129 million and 366 million children, teenagers, and adults globally, and there are types of ADHD. If you have inattentive ADHD, you will struggle to focus and complete tasks even if you want to. You would always lose concentration and have an extremely short attention span. Then there's hyperactive impulsive ADHD, which makes it difficult for you to stay still and control your urges. You'd be unable to sit still or stay quiet, talking a mile a minute like an auctioneer on speed. And then there's combined ADHD, which is what you would get if inattentive ADHD and hyperactive impulsive ADHD had a baby. A very energetic, easily distracted baby with no volume control. Obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. OCD is like having a strict, overbearing mother living in your head, constantly nagging you to clean, check, and organize everything. But instead of just rolling your eyes and ignoring her, you feel compelled to obey. Living with OCD would often make you have unwanted thoughts or fears that just won't go away. It's like having a mental itch that you just can't scratch, no matter how hard you try. Over time, it just develops into these compulsions, which are repetitive behaviors or mental acts that make you want to fix everything as a way of reducing your anxiety or preventing something terrible from happening. For example, you often worry about germs and getting sick, so to ease your fears, you wash your hands over and over again. Clean your house at least 12 times a day, and you'd spray so many disinfectants on anything you come across that you could single-handedly solve the ozone layer crisis. This condition is quite common, affecting about 79 million people worldwide. But people who are diagnosed with OCD are often treated with cognitive behavioral therapy. Mental disorders can be very challenging, but you can join our Discord channel today to help you learn everything you need to know. Autism Spectrum Disorder, ASD. Imagine you're in a room full of people and everyone is laughing at a joke, but you can't seem to get the hang of the joke or what they're even talking about. It feels like you're lost on another planet or something. Well, this is the typical day-to-day routine of people with autism spectrum disorder, ASD. This neurological condition affects how people communicate, interact, and perceive the world. It's like having a brain running on a slightly different operating system than most people. It might take a little longer to process certain things or get hung up on details that other people wouldn't even notice. If you're on the autism spectrum, you might struggle with things like social interactions, making eye contact, or even understanding plain old jokes. Still, on the flip side, you might have intense interests or hobbies you focus on with laser-like precision, be highly creative, or even have a fantastic memory for details like remembering what your second-grade teacher wore on the first Monday of October. But autism isn't a one-size-fits-all condition. It's called a spectrum because everyone on the spectrum is different with their unique combinations of traits and characteristics. So while some people on the spectrum might be non-verbal, others might be highly articulate. Some might have exceptional skills in math or music, while others might struggle with academic or occupational tasks. ASD affects about 1% of the global population, and even though there's no medical procedure to reverse the condition, it can be managed through behavioral therapy, educational interventions, and medications to help with the anxiety, irritability, and hyperactivity that often accompanies ASD. Sleep disorder. According to the World Sleep Society, about 45% of people globally suffer from a type of sleep disorder. One of these disorders is insomnia, which is a condition where you just can't drift off to dreamland no matter how exhausted you are or how hard you try. It's like your brain is having a house party and forgot to invite your body. Aside from insomnia, where you spend more time counting sheep than actual sleeping, some people have to deal with narcolepsy. With this delightful disorder, you can't stop falling asleep even if it's in the middle of the day and you slept like a log all night. You could knock off anywhere, driving, cooking, or even during a job interview. I'm really excited about this apport. Well, you can see how this could be a huge problem. And then there's sleep apnea, which would feel like having a built-in alarm clock in your throat. With sleep apnea, your breathing literally stops for short periods during the night, and if this continues, you'll essentially begin to snore louder than a freight train, and it can be pretty fatal if left untreated, kind of like hitting the snooze button one too many times. Sleeping disorders can even make you sleepwalk, sleep talk, or even sleep eat. It's like having a secret life you don't remember in the morning. Just hope you don't sleepwalk your way into an embarrassing situation like raiding your neighbor's fridge naked. Paranoia. It is very normal to get scared and suspicious of people sometimes, especially when there's a valid reason to be. But for a person with paranoia, that fear and suspicion is multiplied by 10,000. Let's say you're at work and see two colleagues talking quietly in a corner. You'd probably think they have personal matters to discuss, but a person with paranoia would believe that they're plotting to get her fired or even killed. It's like your brain has literally turned into a suspicious detective that sees threats everywhere, even when there's no real reason to be scared. You'd suspect and think everybody and everything around you is out to hurt and get you. Coupled with your irrational fear and mistrust of everybody, you'd also get easily offended and defensive and be very hostile, argumentative, and aggressive. It'll basically be a game of how many bad habits can I have. This mental disorder can be caused by genes, traumatic life events, and extremely stressful life events. Dyslexia. Now, imagine a classroom where kids are learning to read and write. Most kids would pick up reading and writing after some time, but a child with dyslexia might find it much harder to even recognize the letters, talk more about reading the words. It's like their brain is on a different learning adventure that needs extra time and help to find the correct path. Dyslexia basically affects the part of your brain that processes language, making it more difficult to learn how to read, write, or spell words, and numbers always appear like a jumbled mess they can't understand. If a person with dyslexia were trying to make pancakes using a cookbook, the recipe would say add 2 spoons of sugar, but they'd probably see add 2 slat. Writing down their thoughts or even copying a text may be very slow, challenging, and full of spelling errors. However, dyslexia is not about intelligence because people with dyslexia are just as smart as everyone, but they are just taught differently. People with dyslexia use tools like phonetics programs to help break up words into sounds, audiobooks, and speech-to-text software.